Quite a number of years ago now, I was teaching a class of young people, children. They weren't yet teenagers, I don't think. And I was trying to talk to them about God. Most of these children had no real church background or knew much about the Bible or even what the Bible was. So how do you describe God? I asked them to write down ways in which God was like their father. Well, one of them said, well, I can't see my dad and you can't see God. And that for him, of course, was very true. What an inappropriate example I was trying to use amongst children for whom family life really wasn't as it should be. Not everyone's experience is the same. Sadly, my knowledge of this aspect of human life increased for the worst. One day I was driving a minibus full of children home from our youth club, and as I turned into one road, one of the boys said, "Oh, my dad lives down here." Immediately another boy said, "Yeah, my dad does too." As we went down the road, as we approached a particular house, we were just going to go past it, the first boy pointed and said, "That's it, that's where my dad lives." And the other boy said, "My dad lives there as well." They both asked me how it is that both of their dads could live in that same house. And I explained, oh, it's quite a coincidence, I suppose. But they couldn't understand why they didn't know that or they'd not met when they were there. Sometime later, quite a few weeks later, I figured that there must have been some discussion when they got to their respective homes, because they excitedly came into the youth club or the church building and told me that they discovered they were brothers or half-brothers. They had the same dad. For them, this was wonderful, and I'm so thankful for that. But I was trying to describe God, who is complete and perfect, from an imperfect standpoint. And if we want to understand what fathers are like, sometimes we don't have the best example of that. For some, like myself, we have a wonderful example. We're very lucky, very fortunate. But for others, to say that God is like a loving Heavenly Father is difficult to express from a position of not having had a good experience with a father. So I don't really want to try and describe what our loving Heavenly Father is like. I want to consider being a dad. And after a few years of preaching, I was called into a family meeting actually, and I was banned in no uncertain terms from ever using family examples ever again in my sermons. So in this talk, I can't really reveal much about our family life and my experience of being a dad. This just leaves me the Bible. So I want to consider what the Bible has to say about being a dad. We live in a broken world. And part of that brokenness, of course, and very sadly, is seen in families that don't function in the way that they should. It can be, as I've said, a bad experience for some. You see, for many, family life, can be quite idyllic. Some just have challenges along the way that actually draw them closer together as they face those things together. Sadly, for some, family life can go very, very wrong, extremely wrong in some cases. But what does it mean to be a dad? If the father is supposed to be the head of the house, if the father is supposed to be the one who's setting the example, is there something from the Bible that we can find that will help us, not just as fathers to children, but actually help us in our relationship anyway? You see, there's lots of advice. There are so many books that you can buy on different aspects of being a father. So much has been written in articles, so much said in podcasts that you can listen to, and maybe glean a nugget here and there. My experience of reading books is, well, this counts in your experience. This is certainly not what it's like for me. There are, of course, counselling services as well, which are overwhelmed as they try and deal with family difficulties. So family life can be really difficult. Add to that each situation is different. There is no one size fits all to deal with the various issues that can arise in families, and certainly the way in which to deal with them might work in one instance, sadly somehow it doesn't work in another. There are different characters, each dealing with various problems because of their specific experiences that have left them with issues that they find it difficult to deal with. And I'm certainly no expert when it comes to things like that. But I do believe that the Bible is the Word of God, and it has much to inform us concerning these things. So what can we learn from it to help us each as we either strive to be a better father or just a better person in our relationships? A great benefit, I believe, to every child is to have both parents in their lives. I say in their lives because the reality is we are living in a broken world where there are broken families. And it's not easy sometimes for a family to stay together. In fact, in some cases, it might be advisable that they don't stay together. So where a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, have formed a family unit, they still need to be of good character for that family unit to really work. If there's violence and abuse, then of course they should be protected either from each other, and certainly the children should be protected from it, and distance should be put between those who are offending in that way. But if a good man is involved with his children, hopefully by living with them, but if they can't live together, certainly by getting as involved as possible, then there are advantages to the children, I believe. An advantage of spending quality time with the father. But the responsibility is on the dad. It's not just outright meanness that should be avoided. We think of broken families and we think of terrible actions that have taken place to cause that, whether it's adultery or whether it's violence or abuse or whatever it might be. But what about those families that stay together and yet the little things cause an impact? The little things cause distress. Not things that you would separate over, but things that happen day to day, seemingly unnoticed, but have a dramatic impact on the children. You see, we read in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." Winston Churchill, famous of course for being the great leader of World War II, lived with a terrible sadness from his childhood right until the day he died. You see, he had a terrible father, Lord Randolph Churchill. This man didn't like the way his son looked. He didn't like his looks. He didn't like his voice, the way he spoke, because he had a lisp. It let him down somehow. He didn't like to be in the same room with his son. He never, ever complimented Winston. He only ever criticised him. We know this because there are letters that Winston wrote home from which much can be learned about. You see, he was sent off to boarding school, but he never received a visit from his parents. In one book where some of these letters are spoken of by William Manchester, the book's called The Last Lion, Winston Spencer Churchill, Visions of Glory, he quotes a letter from Churchill which says, "I would far rather have been apprenticed as a bricklayer's mate, or run errands as a messenger boy, or helped my father to dress the front windows of a grocer's shop. It would have been real. It would have been natural. It would have taught me more, and I should have got to know my father, which would have been a joy to me." In his letters, Winston begged his parents for attention and asked his mother to get his father to write back to him, which he never did. In Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4, in a different version of the Bible, it says, "Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with a discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord." Fathers who criticise their children bring terrible, terrible discouragement to them. A parallel verse of the Bible to Ephesians is found in Colossians chapter 3 and verse 21. And there's another do not there. Fathers, do not aggravate your children, or they will become discouraged. The New American Standard Bible has it this way, that children made bitter by nagging and deriding lose heart. You can see a child that's lost heart in their sad eyes. You can see a child who's been discouraged by their deflated posture as they've been disheartened by the lack of attention or the criticism of an overbearing parent. You see, criticism can take various forms beyond just explicit words. Some parents choose not to praise their children too much, based on the principle that their praise will be more meaningful when given sparingly. Although, I think we know that more often than not, it is given less often, or maybe even not at all. There's also pulling the rug from under the feet with praise that says, that was okay, you did well, but you can do better next time. Are they to be pleased, or haven't they really achieved what they thought they had? You see, sometimes it's not even the words, but it's the tone of voice or the divided attention that conveys the message to the child. Why do fathers, or people generally, overly criticise? It could be the way their own fathers treated them. That's what they've learned. It's learned behaviour. Could it be that their own low self-esteem makes them actually jealous of the child's success? Perhaps they're merely critical people who manage to hide it in public but cannot control it in family settings. Is there ill feeling because of the love the mother is now transferring to the child and the husband feels he's been neglected? According to the ancient teachings of the Bible, parents are advised not to exasperate their children with criticism. Some fathers exasperate their children by being overly strict as well and controlling. It is a difficult thing to get the balance right, of course. It would be good to remember an example that I was once told, that raising children is like holding a wet bar of soap. If you get too firm a grasp of it, it shoots from your hand. If you hold it too loosely, then it slides away. You need a gentle but firm hold to get the greatest benefit. It's difficult to measure the impact that excessive strictness has had on the children of church members. I say church member because I've great doubt about it being any part of Christianity. In my lifetime being around the church, for all of my lifetime, I know of individuals who spent their entire lives reacting to the harsh legalism of their upbringing. They had placed on their shoulders burdens that were hardly possible to bear. Some tragically turned away from the faith. Others managed to keep loving God, but fell out of love with their experience or perception of church. I say their perception because God's church is surely good. We're the ones who mess it up. Without making excuses or trying to place blame, why is it that some fathers are overly strict? Perhaps they're trying to protect their children from an increasingly immorally bankrupt, ungodly culture. Smothering rules seem to be the best way to accomplish that. Others perhaps just have controlling personalities anyway, and they use rules or money or friendship or power to rule their children's lives. The Bible that is read to merely control others becomes a license to dominate. Still, others wrongly understand their faith in terms of law rather than grace. Some are overly strict because they're concerned about what others will think, how my child and their behaviour reflects on me. What will they think if my child is seen here or is seen participating in that? Children of Christians have been catapulted into rebellion because of their fathers dominatingly squeezing them into lives that fit in with the congregation's or the wider church fellowship's expectations. And that is surely a sin. The child is not the one that's being thought of. The good name of the father is at risk if the child lets them down. and the best way is to be strict with them, so you're seen to be a better person. How sad. Fathers have to say no to a lot of things, and often church kids know all too well what they cannot do. But what can they do? They can't live in a vacuum. We have to be biblical regarding our no's, and as our children grow, be prepared to discuss the rules biblically so that they are understood biblically. We have to be able to explain scriptural principles. Because I say so is perhaps appropriate when our children are young. Why can't I do that? Because I say so. It's dangerous. But as they grow, there needs to be more of a reason for our decisions, because we need to train them to make good decisions themselves. They have to learn to look after themselves, and we need to teach them how to form educated biblical decisions. Do you know why you do not do the things that you do? Do you know why it's okay to do the things you do? Are these formed from biblical scriptural principles? Along with all this, fathers mustn't be irritable, or perhaps maybe we should say shouldn't be irritating. Life is sometimes like the cartoon where the boss is really grumpy and grouchy towards a worker. The worker goes home and is irritable with his wife. The wife is then irritable with the children. His son then kicks the dog. The dog runs down the street and bites the first person that he sees, who happens to be the man's boss. What a vicious cycle. Fathers, or anyone else for that matter, must never let pressure of work or whatever drives us into this unhappy cycle to do so. The costs are too high for the family. Do not put up with rubbish at work and go home and take it out on the family. Man up and deal with it where it needs to be dealt with, at work. Choose an easy target at home. It's difficult to drive a car by pressing down on the accelerator and the brake at the same time. It's far worse for a child, for the rules are constantly changing according to the mood of the father. It's exasperating because of the conflicting messages. So, as a father, you need to be consistent. Don't make a promise to your children that you won't keep. Now, as I said earlier, I'm not allowed to talk about our own family, but let me just say it took me 10 years to fulfill a promise I made to my daughter when she was 8. That was a rough 10 years. I don't advise it. Are there any unfulfilled promises that come to your mind for you? An ice cream they didn't get, a holiday that was never enjoyed? You might forget it, but children have the memory of elephants, and they will remind you. Along with all this, time does not permit me to discuss not showing favouritism, but I hope that it's understood anyway. Just think of the damage caused by the sin of Isaac, who favoured Esau over Jacob. It was the damaging sin of Jacob who favoured Joseph over his brothers. Like favouring father, like rejected son. How crushing, how disheartening to know that you are less favoured and less loved. We do, of course, have to be practical with these things. Some children do need more discipline than others. Some need more independence. Some need more guidance. Some need more structure. Some need less. Some need to be held more than others. Some need more encouragement. But no child should ever be favoured over another. Let's remember the do-nots of fatherhood that flow out from the command, do not exasperate your children. That's the only piece we need to remember, because everything else flows out from it. Experience tells us the way to not exasperate our children, or even other adults. Don't be critical. Don't be over strict. Don't be irritable. Do not be inconsistent. And do not show favouritism. God has created our children with a heart that's turned towards us, and with that we have the incredible opportunity to do so much good. Happy fathers do not exasperate their children.